All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive deep into a core principle from Dale Carnegie's absolute classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And get this, the lesson starts not with a friendly handshake, but with a massive, citywide manhunt for a killer.
Okay, so let's jump right in with a story that honestly seems to defy all logic. It's all about this massive gap, right? The gap between who we think we are and how everyone else actually sees us.
So, who do you think said that? A poet? Maybe a philosopher? Some kind of misunderstood artist? Well, the real answer is way more shocking than you can probably imagine. And believe it or not, it holds the key to this entire chapter.
So, the story really kicks off on this one spring day in New York City, with one of the wildest police sieges the city had ever witnessed.
I mean, picture this. A regular neighborhood is suddenly turned into a full-blown war zone. For more than an hour, all you can hear are pistol shots and machine guns echoing down the streets. And inside one of these apartments, a pretty notorious killer is trapped, just firing away from behind a big comfy chair.
Okay, but here's the kicker. This violent criminal, I'm talking about a guy who shot a police officer just for asking to see his license. He's the one who wrote those words you just heard. The stuff about having a kind heart?
So, how in the world does a killer see himself as a kind person who wouldn't hurt a fly? It's just wild, right? And this crazy contradiction, it reveals this fundamental truth about us, about human nature, that Dale Carnegie basically built his whole philosophy on. Think about it. If a guy like Crowley doesn't blame himself, what does that say about the rest of us?
So, that complete delusion from Crowley, that's the key. That's what unlocks this whole principle for us. Carnegie masterfully connects the dots from a killer's self-image straight to how we deal with each other every single day.
And this, right here, this explains why criticism just doesn't work. It is almost always doomed to fail. I mean, if a cold-blooded killer doesn't blame himself for what he did, what chance do you think you have of making your coworker or your friend accept your condemnation?
And Carnegie, he just captures this whole idea with this brilliant, simple metaphor. When you criticize someone, you're not sparking some positive change. Nope, you're kicking a beehive. You're not going to get any of that sweet honey, cooperation. All you're going to get is stung by a whole swarm of resentment.
Yeah, kicking that beehive, it sets off this totally predictable and, let's be honest, completely counterproductive chain reaction. It doesn't inspire anyone to be better. All it does is inspire them to defend themselves and build up these hard feelings that can stick around for years. And this powerful insight from the psychologist Hans Selye really explains why. We're all wired to want approval. We crave it. But we are even more powerfully wired to fear and just plain hate being condemned. That sting of criticism, it is potent, and man, it lasts a long, long time.
This isn't just theory. This principle was mastered by one of the greatest leaders in history. Let's take a look at Abraham Lincoln, in a moment where he was feeling incredibly and, completely justifiably frustrated. Okay, so picture this. The Battle of Gettysburg is over, a huge win for the Union, and President Lincoln sees this golden opportunity, a chance to end the entire Civil War right then and there. He orders General Meade to attack the retreating Confederate army, but his general just fails to act.
You can imagine Lincoln was furious. I mean, absolutely livid. So he sits down and writes what has to be one of the most scathing letters of his life, just pouring out all of his disappointment and frustration right onto the page. But here's the thing. General Meade never read it. That letter was found in Lincoln's personal papers after he died. And that raises a really powerful question, doesn't it? A question about leadership and really just about people.
Because Lincoln, even in that moment of white-hot anger, he understood. He knew that kicking the beehive would achieve absolutely nothing. Yeah, the criticism was 100% valid, but what would the result be? Resentment, excuses, and just damage to the whole cause. It wouldn't bring victory. So he chose being effective over satisfying his own ego.
Okay, so what does all this mean for us, right? We're not presidents or generals, but we deal with these exact same human emotions every single day. This next bit, from an essay called Father Forgets, really brings it home. It shows how all those little constant criticisms can just poison our most important relationships. The father just lists off this whole series of tiny daily complaints he had about his son. And then comes his big, devastating realization.
He sees that his daily critiques, they weren't helpful lessons. They were just a bad habit, a destructive habit. His reward to his son for just being a kid was negativity.
And this piece of ancient wisdom really sums up the ultimate lesson here, doesn't it? Before we go out trying to correct everybody else, we have got to look in the mirror first. Improving yourself is way more profitable and a heck of a lot less dangerous than trying to improve others by tearing them down.
And all of this, it brings us to the very first, the foundational principle of dealing with people. This is the bedrock that Carnegie builds everything else on. It's simple, it's direct, and man, is it incredibly hard to actually master.
This isn't just some clever technique for managing people. It's a fundamental shift in how you see them. It's about realizing that everyone, from criminals to our own family members, is driven by that same deep need for approval. So the next time you're tempted to criticize, just remember the beehive. Understanding, not condemnation. That's the only way you're ever going to get the honey.